Money has a way of revealing who someone really is. Some people treat it as a tool, others as power, and a few, like my husband, use it as a weapon. My name is Sabrina Kale, and I was married to a man who swore we were always on the edge of financial ruin. Every conversation about money ended the same way, him sighing, me apologizing. For years, I believed we were barely keeping our heads above water. I cut corners, canceled vacations, and worked overtime at my job as a financial coordinator for a tech firm, while he, Evan Kale, always had a new reason why our accounts couldn't handle extra spending. His excuses came wrapped in patience and logic, taxes, emergencies, long-term goals. I used to admire how calm he was under pressure, how he never raised his voice, even when I asked too many questions. He'd just place a hand on my shoulder and say, "Bree, you don't have to worry about this stuff. I've got it handled." For a long time, I let him handle it. It started to unravel one night about 2 years into our marriage. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing client invoices, when Evan called from the living room. "Hey, can you transfer $200 from your personal to the joint? I forgot the electric bill hit early." I frowned. "Didn't I just do that last week?" He laughed lightly. "Yeah, but the gas bill came in higher than expected. Winter's rough, huh?" It didn't feel right. We lived modestly. 2-bedroom apartment, no kids, no debts except his car. My salary wasn't massive, but it wasn't small either. And his job at an engineering firm paid well. Where was it all going? The first red flag came in the form of a bank statement. I'd logged in to download proof of rent payments when I noticed several transfers labeled business expense reimbursement going from our joint account to an unfamiliar account ending in 9821. I asked Evan about it casually over dinner. "Oh, that's the reimbursement card my company uses. They funnel things through a temp account," he said without blinking. It sounded plausible, until I checked again the next month and saw the same pattern. This time larger. Thousands. Gone. For a few weeks, I told myself not to overthink. Maybe he really was being reimbursed through some weird corporate setup. But a voice in the back of my head, the one that used to whisper logic during late-night fights, wouldn't shut up. I'm a financial professional. I know how clean accounting works. And this wasn't it. So I started to quietly investigate. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I began keeping notes, dates, amounts, and transfer references. I noticed that most of these reimbursements landed mid-month, often on Fridays. I checked his calendar, nothing about business trips or expenses during those periods. Then, one afternoon at work, I decided to test something. I called his company's HR department, pretending to clarify a form. Casually, I asked, "And the reimbursements, you guys still process through employee cards, right?" The woman laughed softly. "Oh no, we switched to direct payroll deposits last year, way simpler." That was the moment my stomach dropped. He'd been lying. I didn't go home that night right away. I drove to the marina near the edge of town, parked, and sat there watching the water darken under the city lights. My hands trembled as the truth settled in. It wasn't just about money. It was about trust. We had built our life on shared sacrifice, or so I thought. All those nights I'd turned down dinners, skipped birthdays, stretched groceries, while he apparently had an entire business account I knew nothing about. Over the next few weeks, I played the part of the oblivious wife perfectly. I laughed at his jokes, handed over receipts, even thanked him for being so good with budgeting. But behind that smile, I was mapping every digital trail he'd left. I went through old emails, tax returns, investment files. Nothing obvious. Then one evening, while sorting through a folder labeled insurance, I found a USB drive tucked inside a manila envelope. It wasn't labeled. I plugged it into my laptop, heart racing. Inside was a single folder titled House Fund. My breath caught. We talked about buying a house once, a conversation that ended with him saying, "Maybe in a few years, once we've recovered financially." I clicked the folder open. There were PDFs, bank statements, all from a private account under his name only. Balance $612,487. I stared at that number for a full minute. It felt unreal. $600,000. All while he'd been telling me we couldn't afford a weekend getaway. The transactions showed steady deposits over years, dating back before our marriage. Some transfers were from his salary, others from unknown sources labeled consulting. But what broke me was the fact that some deposits were made during times he'd claimed we were struggling. When he came home that night, I was sitting on the couch, expression neutral. "Hey," he said, dropping his keys in the bowl, smiling. "Everything okay?" I forced a small smile. "Yeah, just tired." He leaned over, kissed my forehead, and walked to the kitchen. I watched him open the fridge like nothing had changed. In that moment, I realized how easy it was for him to live a double life. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I made a plan. My first step was to consult Nadia, my best friend and an attorney who specialized in family law. We met at a cafe downtown. "He's hiding assets," I told her, showing her the printed bank statements. Nadia raised an eyebrow. "This isn't just hidden income, it's marital concealment. Legally, half of this is yours." "Even if the account was opened before our marriage?" I asked. "Depends on when the funds were added," she said. "And since most of these deposits were made after you married, that makes it shared income." Her words hit like caffeine and fire. For the first time in months, I felt awake. I spent the next few days gathering everything: printed statements, metadata from the USB, even screenshots of messages where he'd claimed we were broke. I didn't want revenge out of spite. I wanted justice. But the more I thought about how calmly he'd lied to me for years, the more a darker satisfaction started brewing. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Evan told me he'd be going on a 2-day business trip to Denver. The same night he left, I logged into his hidden account using the saved credentials from the PEGF metadata. Same username, predictable password. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Half of that money was legally mine. But taking it wasn't just about the law. It was about balance, about truth. I withdrew exactly half, $306,243.50. Not a cent more. The transfer went smoothly, the confirmation screen glowing like a quiet rebellion. Then I wrote a note and placed it on his pillow. "Now we're even." He came home 2 days later. I was cooking dinner, pretending everything was normal. He walked in, smiling, but it faltered when he saw the note. "What does this mean?" His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. I turned off the stove, wiped my hands, and faced him. "It means I know." He blinked. "Know what?" "The account, the money, the lies." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, "You had no right to touch that." "I had every right," I said evenly. "Half of it was ours. Half of it is mine. That money wasn't from my job. It was savings, investments, deposited after we got married. You think I don't know how marital law works?" He stepped closer, face tightening. "You went through my files? I found what you made impossible to ignore." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "You don't understand. I was protecting us. I wanted a safety net in case something happened. By lying to me for years, I didn't want you to worry," he snapped, finally losing that calm facade. "You always stress about money. I thought I was doing the right thing." I stared at him. "If it was right, you wouldn't have hidden it." He deflated, shoulders slumping. For the first time, I saw guilt flicker in his eyes. But it was too late. The next morning, I packed a small suitcase. He didn't stop me. Maybe he knew he couldn't talk his way out of this one. I moved in with Nadia temporarily, filed for separation within a week, and transferred my half of the funds into a secure trust under my name. Evan tried to contact me multiple times. Calls, texts, even a letter claiming miscommunication. I ignored them all. Then, 2 months later, I got a notice from his attorney. He was contesting the withdrawal, arguing that the funds were non-marital. But the evidence, those deposit dates, those payroll overlaps, told another story. In the courtroom, he tried to look confident, but when my lawyer presented the proof, even his expression cracked. The judge ruled in my favor. His case was dismissed, and his credibility was shredded. After the hearing, as we left the courthouse, he approached me. "You ruined me," he said quietly. I met his eyes. "You did that yourself." He opened his mouth as if to argue, then stopped. There was nothing left to say. Life after him was quieter, but sharper. I used part of the money to buy a small townhouse. Not extravagant, just mine. I started consulting independently, building financial plans for women who'd been manipulated, defrauded, or deceived by partners. The work felt personal, like each case was another layer of myself being restored. A few months later, I got a message from a mutual acquaintance. Evan had been fired from his firm. Apparently, they discovered irregularities in his side projects, consulting fees that didn't add up. I didn't feel joy, exactly, just a steady, clean sense of closure. One rainy evening, as I sat by the window with a cup of tea, I thought back to the first time he told me we couldn't afford something, how small and powerless I'd felt. And I smiled, realizing I wasn't powerless anymore. In the end, money didn't destroy us, lies did, and for once, I was the one in control of the truth.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.